Welcome to Adobe Photoshop TV from the National Association of Photoshop Professionals. And here's your host, the Photoshop Guy, Scott Kelby, Dave Cross, and Matt Klaskowski.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another tax-exempt episode of Adobe Photoshop TV, brought to you by the National Association of Photoshop Professionals, publishers of this fine magazine, Photoshop User. Check it out. It's great.
This week's episode is sponsored in part by CDW. Go to cdw.com to find all of your computing needs.
And, of course, DLO, Digital Lifestyle Outfitters. All kinds of cool things for your iPod and things like that. Check it out.
Right, and also LC Technology is a great way to recover data from those corrupted drives that you might have.
And finally, the company that we like to call Adobe Systems, makers of Photoshop and all the other cool software in the world.
It is good that we like to call them that, since that is their name.
They might get mad if we call them something else.
Exactly. Well, welcome. I'm Dave Cross, and with me today is Matt Klaskowski.
Hi.
And Mr. Corey Barker is here too. And you'll notice that Scott Kelby is not with us. He's off out on the road somewhere doing fabulous stuff for a bunch of fabulous people, I'm sure. But in his absence, we have Corey here to help us out. And we also, later today, you'll see some really cool stuff from Joe McNally. World-famous photographer Joe McNally is going to show us some of his stuff and how he did it. Some photography that's great.
Yeah,
so,
very amazing stuff.
That'll be a little bit later, along with our regular stuff that we normally do, like contests and tutorials and all that goodness. Speaking of goodness,
I love goodness.
Matt, would you be good and throw to Corey since he's going first? I recovered that one nicely, didn't I?
Nicely recovered. Well, this week, since Scott's not here, we pass the baton to Corey Barker.
Yes, here we are. Well, yet I'm back once again with another warp tool.
Warping.
Ooh.
Something
warping.
cool with the warp tool. All right. So what I have here is a cool picture of this welder. Well, I can see that he's welding something here, but I want to see a lot more sparks coming out of the edge of that welder there. So, to do it real quickly and easily, I'm going to create a new layer.
Nice.
And there you have it, all done.
Wow,
Now,
I hardly saw that coming.
and then, I'm going to make sure that my white is set as my foreground, go to my brush tool here, and with a fairly good sized brush, I'm going to drop the opacity down to about 10%. In fact, I'm just going to input 10. And then I'm going to change the brush's blending mode to dissolve. Not the layer blending mode, but the brush blending mode. And I'm just going to click once, right there. Maybe a little bit higher, right like that. And there, we're all done. No. So
I would have stopped there. Personally, I'm like, yep, I'm done.
now I'm going to bring up my free transform by pressing Command-T, Control-T on the PC. Then I'm going to go, actually I'm going to resize this out just a little bit. Just like that. Then I'm going to press Control to bring up my menu here. And we're going to go to, yes, you guessed it, Warp. And I'm just going to grab inside the center area, kind of like in the upper area here, and just kind of push this up, way up here like this. Almost like we're getting a weird spray effect. Now it looks like it's not all there because we're still in the transform mode. Once I press Enter, it will kind of render itself just like that. And then I just put it in position right here, but we're not done yet. Double click on that layer, bring up my layer styles, and apply an outer glow. And we'll highlight that and just go over here and get really harsh red effect there. Just like that. And there you have it. Quick and easy. Taking a quick little brush stroke, warped it, and made it look like flying sparks right out of that. Isn't that pretty neat?
Now, let me ask you something.
Okay.
Do you just spend every hour with the warp tool seeing what else you can warp? Because
Actually,
you have so many cool things you've done that you've discovered with taking
You'd
something
be really
and warping
surprised what you can achieve with that warp tool. It is amazing. I mean,
It really
really
is. I mean,
take,
that's-
just go and experiment with it and just really push it. I mean, my Photoshop has crashed at least a dozen times with stuff, the warp tool really can't do. But you really, on the way, you discover a lot of really cool stuff. So there you have it.
Cool. Let's see, Matt is getting ready for his
Yes,
story.
yes, good deal.
I'm not sure if that's something that...
Well, I figured out
the
another.
average-
Well, I figured out another. It's going to show another use for the warp tool.
Yeah, well, maybe for another time.
So we'll save that for another time. All right. So I guess I have to do a tutorial.
That would be good.
So often you will go out and take a photo, maybe near some water, and you'll get a reflection on it. And in those reflections might not be, maybe there's some waves in the water, maybe the reflections aren't perfect, but reflections are a very strong part of a photo. So if you can have them crisp and clear, you can really enhance the way the photo looks. So I'm going to show you how to do just that on a photo that I have here, where the reflection, the water was just a little bit more wavy than I would have liked for it. So let's take a look here. And I've got a picture of Corey Barker open. And since Corey used the warp tool, I'll go in and let's see if we can warp Corey here. So we'll select this layer. And I'll go into the warp tool here. And there we go.
There we go. Nice.
There.
The angry,
I like that.
smushed Corey.
I will get. Okay, this is getting bad.
What we do
All right,
for amusement is pretty
We'll
sad.
close Corey. Let's go to the real tutorial here. And I've got a picture of a boat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my lasso tool. I'm just going to draw a lasso selection around the better part of the bottom of the boat here, whatever would be reflecting in the water. As you can see, my reflection's just not quite as crisp as I'd like it. Let's go to the select menu, go down to refine edge. Now, if I'm using the CS3 beta. If you're using CS2 or earlier, you'll go to select feather. Either way, we have this feather setting. I'm going to bump this guy up to 20 pixels, hit OK. And it gives me a feathered selection, which you'll see. I'm going to press Command-J on the Mac, Control-J on the PC, and if I hide that background layer, see we have a nice feathered selection here. Now what I want to do is flip it, so it's the opposite way around. So let's just come here, and I'm going to actually just drag the bottom part down, and that way I can use my Move tool and just kind of finesse this into place here. If you need to see through it to see the bottom of the other boat, all you got to do is you can drop your opacity down. And you can do that while you're in free transform mode or in warp mode. So I can drop the opacity down and I can just align this right up to the very bottom of the boat here. Hit enter, and then don't forget to go up and put that opacity back up. Now, at this point, it's going to look a little bit fake because it's just a flipped copy of the bottom of the boat. So what I want to do now is I'm going to add a layer mask to this layer and select my brush tool. And what you want to do is just start to mask out all the areas from the reflection that aren't actually helping or doing anything for the reflection. So I'm going to select my brush tool, make sure my foreground color is black, and just start to paint out areas. And notice that I have my opacity set down to 50% here. And just start to paint out any of the areas that don't quite fit for the reflection. Do you hear them laughing?
If you don't hear your tutorial, really, it's not.
If you don't hear them laughing, oh jeez. All right, so I've painted out some of the areas here. It still looks a little bit too fake, if you will, because we can still. It just looks like the reflection of the boat was flipped right onto the bottom. So what I need to do now is run a filter on it. We're going to go to the filter menu. Make sure you click onto the photo layer. All right. Now we're going to go onto the filter menu. I'm going to go down to distort, and let's go to zigzag here. And just set a setting of 22 and 5, and I'm going to choose the pond ripples because this is not a pond, but hey, pond ripples works best. If it's not enough, Control-Alt-F, and let's bump that amount size up to, let's take that one up to 30 here.
Ish.
30-ish. And we run it again. So you can see it kind of warps it, twirls it a little bit, so it just doesn't look like it's a perfect reflection here. And then, since Corey was talking about the warp tool, and I think we're going to do a warping show of Photoshop TV, I'm going to go into free transform and then click that little warp icon, and let's bring this corner upward here. Before I do that, click that little link icon. Because if I don't click that link icon, I warp both the layer and the mask. So do as I say, not as I do. So click that link icon, turn off your mask here, and then just drag that guy up so it looks like it's hitting the boat a little bit more. And then come down here and we'll drag the bottom part down.
Ah.
See,
Warping.
see, warping.
Warping is good.
Warping, warping. Hit the enter key. And then you're probably going to have to come in here and just clean up with some masking. So again, we'll paint with black. And then the last thing I will do here is just drop the opacity of the layer just a little bit, just to bring back a little bit more of the color and the texture that was on top of the water there. And that's it. Take a look. Here's our before, and here's our after. And if I can do one more thing,
Do it.
I'm just going to rotate that over just a little. Not the mask. Click on the layer. Rotate that over just a little bit because it got a little bit crooked there. There we go. So now we have, that's our before, and that's our after. So now we have a nice little way to add a reflection.
Very nice. Reflecting on that tutorial, I'd say it was a little warped. Well, I'm warped right out, basically. So I think it's time for a break, don't you?
Couldn't agree more.
Well, yes. I was going to do it anyway, whether you agreed or not. But, okay, good. We'll be right back after this short break with more Adobe Photoshop TV. Stay tuned. All right, this time around for Photoshop on the Road, I'm going to be in Minneapolis on March 23rd. Ben Wilmore will be in Atlanta on March 9th with his photographer's tour, and Bert will be in D.C. on March 19th. I'll also be taking a tour of the Zion National Park with the Great American Photography Workshop. And don't forget, Photoshop World is fast approaching, coming up in April 4th through the 6th. So go to Photoshop World and sign up now. That's it for Photoshop on the Road. Thank you. Hey, we're back. Dave, Matt, Corey. A while back, Joe McNally happened to be walking down the streets, and we said, "Hey, Joe,
It's Joe.
it's Joe McNally, famous photographer. Come on in here and show us some of your stuff." So we grabbed him. I did a little interview with him, as you'll see, and he showed us some of his wonderful photography with a little commentary on how he did it. So let's take a look. It's pretty cool. Well, here we were filming Photoshop TV, and in walked Joe McNally, a world-famous photographer, and he decided, well, he didn't really decide, we coerced him into coming by and showing him some stuff. And you'll notice no computer here because we're not going to make Joe do Photoshop stuff. We're going to have him show some of his images. So welcome, Joe. Thanks for letting us do this. Appreciate it.
I didn't have much choice. They handcuffed me, actually.
That's right. You can't see underneath the table, but we're going to let him go once he's done this. So for that very small percentage of people who don't know who Joe McNally is, give us a brief background on what exactly it is you do.
I'm a freelance photographer, and I've been at it a long time. And one of the things that any photographer does throughout their career is have a conversation with light. Mm-hmm. And in my case, I've used an awful lot of strobe light. And actually, I think I've probably induced Scott Kelby a bit to
yes,
become fond of a particular type of light. Mm-hmm. And what we're going to talk about today is the Nikon SB800, which is a small strobe. It's an incredible bundle of technology in a small package.
Sure. And one of the things that you told us up front was that one of the things that's interesting about this technology is it eliminates some of the need to have huge amounts of equipment. You don't necessarily need that for on-location shoots.
True. A lot of photographers shy away from lighting or even the thought of it because the connotation is when you drag out a lot of lights, you need a tractor trailer full of stuff and 30 assistants, and you're breaking your back and you're just going crazy. And so I thought what I'd do today is show a brief selection of images that I did with exactly one light, one SB800 to be exact, which is, as I say, a very small unit, and it packs away in your camera bag very easily.
Cool. Now, I started the show, so we're going to see, you're going to want to just sort of go through some of these images with us to give us an idea either the background of it or what was involved in this shot.
Sure, this is a Hawaiian fire dancer, and you run into these folks on the street in Hawaii all the time. And this is one light. It's on a cord attached to the camera, and I really do trust the camera technology in this regard. I'm letting the camera do all the heavy lifting for me. I'm on a aperture preferred kind of exposure mode, which means, you know, I'm determining my f-stop, and the camera is choosing the shutter speed. And the strobe is on a cord, as I say, and it's operating completely automatically. It's a wonderful way to just kind of move a light around and experiment very easily.
Sure, cool.
Same thing here. I'm experimenting here in a fairly dangerous fashion. We've got the old SB800 clamped on this. It's a thing called a Justin clamp, which is it comes from Bogan, and it turns a light stand to, you know, it turns just about anything into a light stand, and in this case, the outrigger on this canoe. When I got into the canoe, the guys looked at me and said, you know, there's not 100% certainty that we're not going to tip. I said, swell, let's go rowing.
Awesome.
This, I'm obviously not even with the camera. The technology is, doing the job for me. In many years ago, or not even actually that long ago, this would be a complete hit or miss type of a thing. And in this case, I clamped the camera, my D2X. I asked the biker not to have an accident, and put one SB800 on the hot shoe and let him go riding.
Wow. And then you did remote.
Yeah, there's a remote toggle right to his right thumb, right on his handlebar.
Nice.
So he's actually firing the camera.
Cool.
This is another one of those instances where you might not try this at home. The camera is boomed on a strut outside of this helicopter. It's an older picture, but again, this was the dawn or the advent of automatic strobe technology, and I really decided to push the envelope a little bit, and the camera did an amazing job sorting it out. I'll try anything once.
Yes.
This is a bunch of druids or wannabe druids at Stonehenge, and one of the more miserable nights I've ever spent in my life, in the solid rain of a supposedly spring night in England. And I needed to get some exposure in the background, so I dragged the shutter for 4 seconds, handheld, and just hit him with a straight flash.
Thanks.
Lots of failures, but when you take a chance like that, you'll get some hits in the midst of all those misses.
Nice.
This, you're trying to take a small strobe and just dovetail it nicely with the scene. So I warmed the strobe up to the temperature of candlelight, and took the exposure down by a couple of stops, and just sat and squeezed exposures as these young girls mourned the death of Kurt Cobain on the first anniversary of his passing.
Very powerful.
This is my friend Joe Hodges. He's a New York City firefighter. We're out on Governor's Island watching July 4th fireworks. There's a railing off to the right-hand side of Joe. You can see the highlight on his shoulder. And again, my trusty Justin clamp and one SB800. And again, I'm trusting the camera. It's doing the heavy lifting for me again in this situation. It's exposing the city, the sky, and the fireworks, and Joe. And, I could be at the camera having a cup of coffee.
Sure.
Who knows this face? Friend and mentor Jay Maisel, the father of color photography in many eyes, wonderful photographer, and as I say, a mentor and a friend. And I did this at a workshop. It's a one-light portrait. I put up a scrim. It's called a Lastolite panel. It's a 3-foot square of kind of silky material, and put one SB800 through that, and the result is a wonderful pensive portrait of Jay.
And as you said, Scott Kelby has now become a convert to that style, because we see him with his SB800 and the scrim and experimenting, and he's actually in his blog posted some examples of that work.
Absolutely. And this is up to my neck in swamp water, which is, kind of the usual case out on location. You're sort of out there, in the breeze a bit. This is one SB800 on a stick. My assistant is also up to his neck in water, and he's off to my right, and I'm shooting a long lens. In this case, it's a D2X exposure with a 70 to 200 lens, and I'm right along eyeball to eyeball, basically, with the water level. And there's one flash into this. In this case, they're models. This was an illustrative situation. We're not in Cambodia or any place like that. It's actually a lake in Connecticut.
Oh. You wouldn't know it.
And in this instance, this is kind of in the SB800 family. Nikon has come out with a close-up flash kit called the R1C1. So it's kind of a junior brother to the SB800 in a way. It's a bit more of a specialty item. And I took one of those units and moved it very close in to the model's face, and I broke the mirror, which you're not supposed to do. And then I pointed the camera at the sky with her reflection, and there's a hard light just coming back. You know, if you can imagine, you're her, the mirror, you're holding the mirror right here, and the little flash is literally like this far away from the face.
Very interesting. Well, that's very cool. Now, so if someone wanted to get into that kind of photography, it's literally just a matter of the flash and then one of those clamps potentially, and in some cases, if you want, a diffuser of some nature.
A diffuser, and of course a means to trigger the flash if it's off camera, which you can do with the little pop-up flashes, like a D80 has a pop-up flash, for instance. And if you're using the D2X or the D2XS, you'd have to get either another SB800, or they have a new unit called an SU800, which is just a remote controller. It's not a flash.
Very cool. Well, Joe, that was awesome. I think that's the kind of thing where people love to see not only the photography, but how it's done and get a bit of the inside information. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now, where can people find out more information about your work?
Well, you could hit my website, joemcnally.com.
Excellent.
And we have a bunch of work up on there.
Cool. Well, thanks again for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll see Joe at Photoshop World. You should, too. Pretty cool stuff, huh?
Makes me want to take my camera and toss it away.
Makes me want to take a flash and attach it to some moving object and see if I can get that kind of stuff too. So thank you to Joe for doing that. And next time around, we'll see a little bit more information on how to use those kind of Nikon wireless flash systems. So
A hint
check
of
that
what's
out next
to
week.
come.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Now, before I continue, I want to share a little something with you. Longtime viewers have probably noticed that on occasion I wear a Canada shirt, sometimes a different one. And I have built up quite a collection, and it's now time to retire at least one of those because, you know, amongst other things, they've told us they don't really like us wearing white here. So this is one of the Canada shirts I wore back on episode, what is it? I have no idea. So instead of just, you know, giving it away or something, I thought, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this shirt and a copy of my Photoshop Help Desk book. I'm going to put it on eBay. I'll even sign the shirt if you wish. And the book and the funds that come in from that, I'm going to give to the St. Jude's Children's Hospital, one of my favorite charities. So check that out. We'll try to put the link on the website. But if we don't, just search for, like, Dave Cross Photoshop shirt or something like that. And
heck of a guy.
Bid often, and let's raise some money for charity, shall we? That would be awesome.
Super.
And you get a book along the way.
So
too,
we've done like 70-some shows. You've got 70-some.
Not quite. I'm getting close to it. But there have been a few repeats, as some people will know, but not that many.
Oh, yeah, there's those faithful listeners that will write in, Dave wore the same shirt twice.
I know. I'm sorry. Sometimes it has to happen. I got more coming. But so, with that being said, let me show you a little something. Since we're on kind of a warping theme here, I thought, what the heck?
Warp it.
I'm going to warp it too. So here I have a wine bottle, courtesy from iStock Photo, and I want to put a label on that. So I'm going to take advantage of two things: smart objects and warping. So here's how I'm going to do that. I'm going to place, even though I'm using another Photoshop document, I'm going to use the place command, and you will see why. So this is a multi-layered Photoshop document that I created and just saved as a PSD. And all I'm going to do is scale this down. It's allowing me to scale. I'm holding down Option or Alt to scale from the center, and Shift to make sure it's nice and proportional. And then hit Enter to say that's about the size that I want. And then press Command or Control T for free transform. You can also notice up in the options bar there is the warp button up here at the top. So I'm just going to very simply kind of warp the top and the bottom. And the bottom, he said, as he attempted to pull, but nothing happened. There we go. And just kind of do a little warpy thing. Now, the cool part about this, when you're using free transform and warp, you really can switch back and forth. So right now, it's got the curve I want, but the label's still a little big. So if I click back on that button, it's like a little toggle switch. It goes back to regular free transform, and now I can just scale it down to fit the size that I want and hit Enter once I'm finished. Now, I could stop right there, but I won't. Here is what's been created, a smart object. Because I use the place command, this is a smart object. If we look at it, you see that little symbol on there indicating it is a smart object. So there are two things I could do now with this. I could either go and edit the original, or what I'm going to do is say, you know what, that's really not the real label I want to use. I have a much better one that's more appropriate for our taste in wine. So I'm going to go and, make sure you're clicking on the thumbnail and choose, okay, No, make sure you're clicking on the name of the layer,
Yes.
apparently, and choose Replace Contents, and it will allow me to go and get a different label, which I'll put in, and you'll see that it takes exactly the same warping, so I didn't have to do anything else. It scales it, it warps it to fit. And if you then recognize that, okay, that probably wasn't the greatest name for a bottle of wine, and you need to edit it, you simply double-click on that smart object. It brings you back to the multi-layered file, which I can go in and say, of course, it shouldn't be called cheap red wine because it's actually white wine. So I simply have to change the name, close the document, and save it, and as soon as I come back to this other document, you see it updates automatically. So there are the two of the great benefits of using smart objects is the ability to do that kind of warping and replace, or even edit the original just by doing that.
I love smart objects.
Smart objects are very smart, those objects.
Sometimes they're too smart.
I love warping objects.
I know, and warping smart objects, put it all together.
Yes, combined, yes.
Wow.
We rounded off the warp tutorials
We did.
for
We
the
sort
day.
of did a whole bunch of warping. So, I think we've just about done enough warping for today, so let's take a little sideline trip over to the News Center and hear from Stephanie Cross in the News Center.
Photoshop Storm Team Action News with news anchor Stephanie Cross.
Hi guys, Stephanie Cross here today again at the news. First off, On1 Software has announced their photo frame beta that works also with Photoshop CS3 beta. Check it out at this link right here. And if you're looking for Lightroom presets, go to Inside Lightroom at this URL. And last but not least, Imagenomic has released new products to work with the Photoshop CS3 beta version. Check it out at this link. I'm Stephanie Cross, and I'll see you back next week.
Hey, we're back
Hi.
once again.
It's in our contract.
And guess what? That means it's almost time to wrap things up.
Yes.
I'm sure you're almost as happy as we are in some ways, especially because it's contest time. And you know what that means? We have to tell you who won last time and what the question is this week. Right?
Cool.
Last week, the question was there are 3 tools that have no options whatsoever. Or I shouldn't say that. Name 3 tools because there's more than 3. So name 3 tools that have no options in the options bar whatsoever. And that was the add anchor point, delete anchor point, convert anchor point, or the direct selection tool. Any of those 3, any 3 of those would have been acceptable. And from all the many entries, this person right here, ta-da, won.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, yes. And now we're on to this week's contest. We have some prizes. What do you got?
We do. You have a subscription to Layers Magazine, the Everything Adobe magazine, brought to you by, you guessed it,
Us.
us,
And many others.
and many others.
And I have
Wow.
a subscription to Dave Cross's Photoshop Finishing Touches book.
Subscription, wow.
Everything how-to book for everything you ever wanted to know about finishing touches in Photoshop. You can get a subscription. You get a book just like this every single
Same
month.
book.
No, you don't.
And that's
you
in
will
case.
you will get one book of Dave Cross's Finishing Touches book.
Yes, and this DVD right here, which is the best of Photoshop TV. As we often say, it's very short, but it's good. So you'll win all that stuff if you can answer the following question. Other than the magnetic lasso tool, name a tool that has a magnetic option. Go to PhotoshopTV.com, look for the place where you can enter the contest. Enter once, as always, and we hope you win
Good luck.
these prizes. All right, so
Getting tired yet?
I'm not at all. I'm ready to do another half hour. Let's go.
Okay.
No, we won't. We always like, as you know, to wrap up the show with a few things to do and then a one for the road. So, Matt, what do you...
My to-do this week, so you got to make that noise when you do it, too, is check out, so Photoshop Lightroom is out and about. It is the coolest program to hit the Photoshop market since Photoshop itself. Check out lightroom-news.com for more information on Lightroom and how to use it and all kinds of stuff about it.
Excellent. Corey.
And for a really cool site for all kinds of really cool free fonts, go to dafont.com. That's DAFONT.com. Really cool.
Very cool stuff. I got a couple of awesome fonts from there myself. If you are someone who uses Adobe Illustrator or would like to and learn more about it, we've given prizes away, but it's well worth it. If you haven't done it, check out the website illustratortechniques.com for some sample tutorials and to learn more about our wonderful newsletter that you too can subscribe to.
And you know what? I'll just go ahead and add, and that way anybody watching this show, one of the questions that we get very, very often is, why don't we start an Illustrator TV podcast? And I will tell you right now, the answer is absolutely, positively, no. We will not.
We will not.
But telling you now, don't send it in, don't ask us, because we're not going to do it. So it's not going to happen. So if you want to learn more about Illustrator, that newsletter is about the only other way you're going to do it.
And part of the reason is because on the subscriber website, there are many tutorials. We're almost at 50 now, and video tutorials as well. So it's almost like a podcast, but just there
part of the
you.
other reason is we also have other jobs.
Much as we love Illustrator. So we will not be doing that.
No.
All right, well, only one thing left, and that's one for the road.
I think it's you this
And
time.
I guess it's me, because
Yes.
they're all looking at me expectantly.
What do you got?
Not much of anything. No, I have something actually I use every so often. It's a kind of a cool idea. If you've added an adjustment layer, and then you decide, you've done all your masking, so you've made it all adjust the part you want, and then you decide, you know what, I wonder what it would look like if I use this adjustment layer instead. You don't want to start over again, so just go to the Layer menu, and there's a command called Change Layer Content, and you'll see a menu of choices to some other adjustment layer, preserving your mask, changing the adjustment.
Cool.
Super.
Just like that.
Very
There's
cool.
Dave Cross for you.
Okay.
We done yet?
I think we are.
Okay.
Hey, you know what? He's right, we're done. We thank you so much for sitting through this thing we like to call a show and sticking with us and watching and hopefully enjoying and entering the contest and all that good stuff. I'm Dave Cross. On behalf of Matt.
Thank you, everybody. See you next week.
And Corey Barker.
Bye-bye.
And Scott Kelby, who's not here. We thank you for watching Adobe Photoshop TV. We'll see you next time.